So our session today is just we're going to talk about artificial intelligence and generative AI. I don't necessarily want to present at you, but some of it unfortunately will be that way. But I definitely welcome feedback and your comments and questions because I definitely want people to feel like what they have, their experience, whether it be fantastic experience or little experience with AI, I would love to hear from them. Um, so real quickly, Chris Giles, currently in the Beaverton School District, been a classroom teacher for 17 years. I've taught in Arizona, taught in Brazil, of course, now live in Oregon. And I've done everything from pre-K to high school, mostly middle school. I've done middle school for 17 years, but I taught pre-K to high school when I was in Brazil. And then, fun fact, I love bargain hunting. It's really one of my favorite things to do. Real quickly, our overview is we're just going to talk about the introduction of just concepts for AI, streamlining teacher tasks, enhancing student learning with AI, and then engaging students through AI tools. And I'm looking over here because my other screen's over here. So if it looks like I'm not looking at you, that's why. And then when I think of AI or using generative AI or artificial intelligence, I really kind of think of it as three buckets as a classroom teacher. And that's streaming teacher tasks with AI. That's the first bucket. And we'll talk about that. The second bucket is enhancing student learning, which means as a teacher, I will use artificial intelligence or generative AI to create things that my students can use or it will help them with their learning. And the third bucket is student engagement through AI tools. And today we'll kind of focus on two tools, which I love. So real quickly in the chat, if you don't mind, I'm going to have you just briefly answer one of those questions. You can choose whichever one you want, but what do you hope AI brings to education? What is the concern you have? Or what is your moonshot wish for AI in the classroom? And I'll give you just a minute to think of something and just quickly type that in and put that in the chat. Yeah, concern or like it. It's okay. I'll just kind of the AI will be accepted in a way that offers different ideas for researching and outlining. I love it. Definitely concerned not knowing enough, and I think that's a fantastic concern. That's why I think I would consider myself an enthusiast, somebody who wants to learn. I would never consider myself an expert in this space, but definitely experienced and enthusiast. Yeah, I think a concern for students of using AI is valid, absolutely a valid concern. And then increased access to good literature. I have to agree. I hope so. One thought I really do have is where's copyright going to end up in the next 10 to 20 years? That's my big question because I feel like if it's been published, no, if it's been used on a device to create, technically it's accessible everywhere. That's my wondering still. I'm just curious about copywriting. And then real quickly, if you don't mind, just on a scale of 1 to 5, how comfortable are you using or integrating generative AI? And if you're not familiar with the term generative AI, we'll talk about it in a minute, or just if you want to just say artificial intelligence, but how comfortable are you using this or integrating this into your classroom? And you can see 1 is not very confident, and a 5 is really confident. And no judgment. If you feel like you're a 1, hey, that's super awesome. If you feel like you're 5, I love it. That's awesome too. Yeah. Yeah, good. See, this is what I was hoping for. People who are sharing where they're at, and I love it. All right. I'm not going to go over all these slides, but some of them I just kind of want to briefly talk about. One is obviously when we're talking about using artificial intelligence or generative AI in the classroom, there are things to be aware of, which of course are algorithmic bias, inaccuracies, and data privacy, copyright and stuff. So the reason why I say it is because many districts across Oregon have yet to adopt certain tools or to allow those tools to be used with their school. So my advice to every teacher is always the same. Just make sure the tools you use in your classroom or with your students has been approved by your district, just so you feel like you're kind of like under that umbrella of safety zone. And especially when you consider student data privacy, that's really important. Just real quickly, if you're not familiar with AI, I just want to give just a brief moment. Computer system software that performs tasks. We as people have been using artificial intelligence for a long time. If you've been shopping on Amazon for the past 7 or 8 years, Amazon will suggest something for you, and that's the use of artificial intelligence. Our phone has been using it for a while, and so it's not necessarily new. Matter of fact, it actually came about into the 1950s. So artificial intelligence has been around for a long time. But we move into this new genre, which is like this, basically it's called generative AI. And the picture is really a great photo of how to explain it. It was simply, it's the ability to create, design, and generate. And so artificial intelligence was really great for creating and finishing tasks, automation. Think of generative AI as really great about creating or designing, which if you've ever used anything with AI so far, you can see that it can generate songs, it can generate text, it can generate pictures. So powerful. I love it. So I just want to talk about the first bucket, and the first bucket is streamlining with teachers with using generative AI. So from here on out, if I say AI, I'm really using that term generative AI is really what I'm talking about. And if you have any questions, you want to interrupt me, absolutely. Like this is not about me just, well, I am sharing, but I love for you to interrupt. That is totally okay. Questions, whatever you want. And if you're going to put in the chat, feel free to even just interrupt me. So when you think of a teacher's day or teacher's work, you can kind of see what putting a lot of energy into what we do. Grading, email communication. Obviously, this will vary according to what type of teacher you are: middle school, high school, elementary. And so teacher life is just simply you have a lot of things to do. And this doesn't typically include the actual direct instruction or the group instruction or the learning that's happening. It's just everything else, right? I don't know about you, but I used to have to write my lesson plans and turn them in to my principal every single week in Arizona for years and years and years. Google Docs, which was gigantically huge pain in the booty and frustrating. But I will tell you that with generative AI, if I had to do that today, I would definitely feel a little more comfortable getting that done a lot faster. I would say that. So real quickly, just offloading some of these tasks as teachers that we would use, that we could just somehow kind of lessen the cognitive load on our own shoulders when it comes to our jobs. I'm not asking you to replace everything you do, but think of the ways that you could use generative AI to kind of help with. And obviously communication. If you're a teacher who sends home weekly updates, a weekly newsletter, honestly, I would probably use generative AI to kind of generate some of that content. Take what I've learned, maybe put it in a nice little information communication packet, and then use that as my information. In our school, we do the first 5. The goal is that teachers have students do something for the first 5 minutes. When they walk in, it's on the screen. The students already know their task. While the task might be different each day, their job is to know that when they come into class, this is the 5 minutes they're working, and the teacher can, of course, do attendance or some of those other things. And a lot of our teachers struggle with, like, gosh, what do I, if we're studying about ancient Egypt, what kinds of things can I do that are the first 5? And this is where I would definitely I would definitely encourage teachers to use and to take advantage of generative AI, tools like ChatGPT or even Gemini, to just say, hey, can you create for me a bunch? At my school, I do a would you rather all the time, and I use generative AI to create my would you rathers a lot, and then I might manipulate or modify those. And then evaluations. I don't know what system you use for evaluations, but our teachers have to create student learning goals, like they call slugs. Again, there's nothing wrong with using generative AI to kind of help coach you through the process of creating those goals. Yes, you'll fine tune those to be your classroom goal. You know your students, you know what you do want to learn, but sometimes it's the language that we might struggle with trying to articulate or say that. And that's where I feel like using generative AI with tools like Copilot or ChatGPT will be really, really successful and helpful. And I don't know about all of you at your school, but our district has really adopted a lot more data mindset this year specifically, star reading, we use Renaissance, we use a lot of data. And some of that data is given to teachers and they're asked to manipulate and do something with that data. Sometimes the data is handed to them, already in a organized fashion. Without putting in personal information from students, without putting in identifying information, you definitely can take advantage of using Microsoft Copilot or Generative or Gemini or something to say, here's my generic data that doesn't include student information. How can I look at this differently? What can I do with this data? And you can see on this picture right here, I literally just copied data that we had. And then I used a tool called Napkin AI, which to me, if you've never used Napkin AI, I'll show you what it looks like. It will visualize almost anything you want in an instant. I just want to just take a second to just stop and just show you what it looks like. Not going to like demo the whole thing, but I just want to show you really quickly, and I should have signed in already. And so this was my data that I just pumped in. And then I can ask it to visualize the data. And so what we'll do is if I had this data, this is my information I put in, I can go ahead and click on this generative button and it'll look at the data. And then it gives me some options of what kinds of data tables or how I want to visualize. So it's a really powerful tool. So again, not too much student information, no personal information, but if I have data, numbers that I need to crunch, I love this tool. And I think it's really powerful to use.
I just want to jump in, Chris, and say
ahead.
that I
Yeah.
absolutely love that because I
Yes.
don't like numbers at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably would even take it a step further by asking it, like, based on this data, what is it telling me to do?
Yes.
Because I
Yes.
can't, yeah, I mean, no, absolutely not. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
love that.
I will say, I no, absolutely. This is what I want people to interact and feel comfortable doing that. I will say one thing, Napkin's a tool that I use on my own personal Google account. It's one of those ones that's blocked by our district. So I'll log into my Google account. Again, I don't use personal information or student information, but you are right. Not only present data, but like ask it, like, what are the trends? What are some things that I should look at? How might I sort my students according to this data? I don't know if you're familiar with Kagan cooperative learning, but a long time ago, you used to have to take your formative data and put your students in organizational groups, and it took a long time. Now, if I have the data, I could do that within a few minutes and then reorganize my student groups according to whatever it is that I want. So yeah, no, I love it. And then if we're going to letters of recommendation, I'm not a high school teacher. I don't have to write letters of recommendation, but you might have to for your colleague. Honestly, take what they want and put it into a chat GPT or a Gemini and have it create for you a recommendation. So we're talking about like offloading those little tiny burdens that if you add them all up, they add weight to a teacher's day. So, and then finally summarizing, this was the ODE's guidance on cell phones, which is a long document. And so I just put it into ChatGPT or into Copilot, and I said, can you just summarize it? And I didn't copy all the text. I just copied the link. And as you can see in my image, I copied the link, put it in there, it accessed the link, and I said, can you just summarize it for me in this type of format? So again, offloading. And then last but not least, and yet those were my bullet points I did for the ODE cell phone guidance. And just for quickly, if you're not familiar with using generative AI or any of these tools like Copilot or ChatGPT, the prompt does matter. It's like a vending machine. You put some money into a vending machine and you're expecting to get something out. If you don't put in the right coins, the right denomination, you might kind of struggle. So with using these tools, it's okay to get it wrong. And it's okay to actually ask the tool, ChatGPT or Gemini, what am I missing? What better question can I ask you to get a better response? And it's really helpful. All right, any questions or thoughts? Is anybody in this space besides Bob, which I appreciate you sharing?
I do have a
You
question.
can share again. Yeah, go ahead, dude.
Can we go back to the previous slide?
Yes.
Okay, so this is random, but did you have the AI draw like all of that information on that slide under elements of a good prompt? Like did AI create that slide for you?
No.
Oh, you had to do that by hand.
Yeah. And actually, in a lot of this courses borrowed is used from some research and articles I've used. So no, I did not have AI created, but there are tools that you could say, hey, this is what I have. Can you generate for me a visual image or a visualization of that?
So I've
Is
been
that where you're
trying
going?
that with
Yeah.
ChatGPT, and like it will not, it like always tells me I can't generate an image. I can't generate an
No,
image.
it's yes.
Or it's all
Yeah.
gross and like think
Yeah.
words are spelled wrong.
Yes.
So
Totally.
what should I be using?
If it were me, and this is only because I've discovered these two tools, I'll put it up real quickly. There is one called um, Gamma,
Okay.
GAMMA, and that's a visualization tool that will take information and put it in a visual format.
Okay.
That's one tool specifically, and then the other one is, I believe, it's going to be probably this one here, but it's more about slides.
Oh, okay.
If you're creating a presentation slides,
Yeah.
I if you're not familiar with what Bob's saying, ChatGPT has kind of changed its use of images over the past few months, and they've kind of restricted that. I think because they've gotten a lot of flack about what kind of images are generated. And so when you're trying to generate images using some of these tools, they're not going to be excellent. Some of these other tools are specific to what they can build out. So
That's cool. And they're all free?
yeah, no, totally. And then is there anybody else in this space here who's actually used any of these tools? I'd love to hear it. I mean, unmute, throw it in the chat, but is there anybody who's actually used Gemini or ChatGPT or Copilot or some other tool to do something that would kind of like reduce their burden as a classroom teacher outside of the actual classroom teaching?
I use Chat GPT all the time for lessons, and then also when students respond to a prompt to help me,
Yes.
so I'm not saying the same thing over and over and over again, to expand on it. And so I'm able to take that and edit it a little bit, but it saves me hours of time.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, so let's move on. The next bucket is we're talking about enhancing students. So, like I mentioned, I have these three buckets. This one is still teacher related, but it's about generating content or things that students will engage in. And this is the part that I really, really think where generative AI tools like Copilot, ChatGPT, those tools really, really excel. And so what you're seeing on this page is a lesson plan, just like you mentioned, Darlene. I was working with a science teacher. We were going to do an engineering project where the students were using Spiros, those round robots that you can control with your iPads. And they were going to go ahead and build out a whole entire design to kind of do a beach cleanup. So I asked Copilot or ChatGPT to, hey, help me kind of create a lesson. Here's the things I want to have in the lesson. This is the time frame. It's a 2-day lesson. We've got two 88-minute class periods. This is what I want to do. Can you go ahead and just kind of create an outline for me to kind of help me do that? And then because this is a science classroom, I actually asked it to create the lesson in the 5 E's. And if you're not familiar with 5 E's, it has to do with the scientific lesson for teaching. So, all right. And then again, enhanced lesson. So this is kind of where I want to talk about if you've never used Magic School. So is there anybody in this space who's actually used or heard of Magic School? You can just give me a thumbs up. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And what's powerful about Magic School is it actually has specific design tools to do specific things. In this case, it can specifically design and create lesson plans. And then the rubric generator, you probably have used Magic School or some other tool to create rubrics. But did you know, and this is what I want to kind of pause for a second. I'm not sure if you're a Canvas school district, if you use Canvas, we do. But I want to just briefly stop for a second because what you can do is I actually put in the text already. So I already put in the assignment that I want my students to do. I already put in a kind of a rubric that I want them to create. And what I did was I attached a format of how that rubric needs to be done so I can import it to Canvas. And so if I hit play, or the play button, if I just hit the enter button, it's going to generate for me my rubric for me quickly. But I also asked for it to do it in a specific tool because in Canvas, if you're not familiar with Canvas, and this is what I love about Canvas, in Canvas, under the rubrics tool, you can actually import a rubric. So it used to not be where you could actually import a rubric into Canvas. You actually had to copy and paste, and it took a lot of work. With Canvas now, you can actually import it as long as it's in a format that Canvas understands. So what I did was I downloaded the template. I went to Microsoft Copilot. I said, here's my rubric that I've been working on. can you go ahead and create it and put it in a CSV format so that I can quickly upload it into Canvas? That took about 40 seconds. And then what I did is I came over here to Canvas and I click on import rubric. And what I can do is now my rubric is created in Canvas, and that's it. And we use standards-based grading, so we use the terms highly proficient, proficient. And so now, as a teacher who uses Canvas, I can actually take this rubric and apply it to any assignment that I want. So what took a long time to create a rubric and to import it, especially if you're using Canvas, now takes seconds. So not only can you create rubrics, but you have this enhanced use of using rubrics in Canvas too.
That is such
Yeah,
great
ahead,
information because
yes.
we in Hillsborough, we're basically copying what you guys are doing with standards-based grading on the level of the 4-point.
So I'll tell you what you need to take with you, Bob, is you go back to your district. You talk to whoever.
We don't use Canvas though, of course.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Anyways, yeah, so that was the one thing. And it is a featured option that can be turned on, but once it's turned on, it's good for go. It's good for good. So it's awesome. All right. And then, of course, with Magic School, you have all the tools. And I'm not sure if you're familiar, if you've not used Magic School, but when you go to Magic School, when we talk about tools, we're talking about a lot of tools. And you're like, well, why do I have to use these tools when I could just come over here and just use Copilot? And the reason why is these tools have been designed specifically for educators. They already have that process that in mind. And then these tools, do you remember the old commercial a long time ago called "There's an app for that"? Remember when Apple came out with all the apps and they're like, oh, there's an app for this. Well, that's how I consider AI. There's an AI bot for this. There's an AI bot for that. So if you want to generate images, you can use a specific one that will generate images. If you want to use what I think personally is one of my favorite ones, which is the one that does the YouTube questions, you can copy and paste a YouTube link and put it in here, and it'll generate those questions for you pretty fast. That to me is probably one of my favorite features, is being able to go ahead and have it generate questions using YouTube. So content, YouTube. And the reason why I say that's such a powerful feature is I watch teachers just put a video in front of a student with no direction, no questions to follow up, and no discussion. And so what I do as a classroom teacher is ask it to generate the questions for me, ask it to tell me the timestamps for what kinds of questions it's generating. And then I actually go ahead and import those questions into Canvas, and then I can use them in my Canvas Studio, my Canvas quiz. Or if I want, I can actually have students respond to certain points in the video, because I have asked it to kind of create some discussion questions for the video itself. And so I might have the discussion question up on the board while the students are watching the video. And at 3.2 minutes, that's when I'm expecting students to be able to respond to that question. So not just multiple choice, which is a low level, but the discussion questions, but I think would be more powerful.
So it's like weirdly kind of Ed puzzle, but like without the commercial breaks of the.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And, and obviously there's quizzes and there's other AI tools that also can do this. But sometimes this costs money. So with Magic School, this is free. I can just put in the YouTube video and tell it how many questions I want, the grade level I want it to be, and have the students actually discuss as well. Yeah. And then the last one is about feedback. If you are not familiar with Brisk, it's a pretty powerful tool that allows you to provide feedback. You can use it inside of Canvas. You can use it inside of a Google Doc. So if a student submitted an essay or a written component, you could use Brisk to go ahead and provide feedback to that student in that space. Again, these tools like Brisk, Copilot, Gemini, Magic School, obviously make sure your school district says, yes, you're approved, you can use these tools. Because a lot of times you have to log in with your school account or your school Google account. And just if you're not fully aware of this or the thought process, in my brain, my spicy head says, I, as a teacher, use AI to generate a task. I give it to my students. They use AI to create the task because maybe they just don't want to do it. And then I use AI to give feedback on the task. So in the end, I'm like, that's a really bad cycle to create. So trying to keep the human in the loop, I think it's okay to use AI or generative AI to give feedback. I have no problem with that. Um, but it can easily be just a very quick vicious cycle of where in the world does the teacher get involved in? So yeah. And then if you've never used school I love this tool, and I'm not here to sell you on it, but the reason why I love it is because it has what's called assistance. I have braces. I apologize. And its design is to actually help teachers process or do things. So I'm going to hit escape for a second and come over here to School AI. And so over here on School AI, it's called Assistance. So if I just click on School AI, I have an account. I click on Assistance. These tools are specifically designed for teachers. So for example, I want co-teacher. This is where I just need to process something, or I'm dealing with something, or I'm trying to create a project. This is the place where you come in and you just type information and it starts to work like a coach and just kind of ask questions. It starts to pose things. I love this tool. So I'll go back to assistance again. You can see it says Common Core expert, field trip coordinator. I don't know how many of you who actually have to spend the time creating, designing field trip coordinator, but honestly, if it takes you this much time to actually physically spend time creating it versus coming over here and saying, hey, I need help planning and organizing a trip, I think it's probably worth trying to do. And then one I use the most, this is the one I use the most in this area here, is called the Space Designer, which we'll talk about what that looks like. But this tool here is extremely powerful because this allows me to create a place where students can engage with an AI bot. And I come here first to get some ideas, and then I take that idea and I build the space for my students. So I'll show you what that looks like. Okay. And like I said, please interrupt. I'm happy to do so. So questions or thoughts? Is there anybody in this space who's used Magic School or School AI or even Brisk? If you wanted to tell me your experience, I'd love to hear.
I've used Magic School a little bit. Sometimes
Okay.
you create like learning songs for students on a
Love
certain
that.
subject that's related to something we can, sing or do that way because I'm teaching elementary. But and I've used it for a couple of other things, but that I'm interested in the school AI one now.
Yeah, no, totally. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Yes, absolutely.
What are all these? Okay, so I mean, I've used all these, but I use my subscription through school, right? Like not a subscription, but I sign in using my school account.
Yeah.
If you're not if let's say you're a substitute or something, and you're not tied to a school, is this free?
Yeah, as an educator, it's free. Now, if I'm a substitute and I'm teaching around the district, you're still going to use your district Google account probably to log in, so you're okay to the district. But you might be like, hey, I'm substituting tomorrow for a science class. Just in case the teacher did not leave me really helpful subplans, let's create some things that I could do that I could bring into the class. I think I've subbed before. I don't know if you guys have subbed before, but I've subbed like 20 or 30 times in different high schools over the past couple of years. And there are moments where you're like, there's nothing in here for me to do with the kids. This would have been helpful. Like, okay, the students are learning about X. Let's start generating something so I could use that. So, yeah. Okay, this is the part where I love. This is my favorite part about everything. So this bucket is really about creating a place for students to actually physically engage with the AI. So we've been using AI to solve efficiency issues. We've been using AI to create lesson plans and other ways that we could create content for our students. But now this is about creating an actual space for our students to engage with the AI bot. So I'll talk about School AI and Magic School. Again, I'm not trying to sell you on either one. I have a free account for both. They work fantastic. Both tools offer training, and you can get badges, and then eventually you get your badge up. And then a lot of times they give you a pro version for X amount of months because you are a pioneer or something like that. So this is a lesson that we did a few weeks ago, about a month ago. A teacher, a middle school teacher, she was 7th grade language arts. They're doing research. She wanted her students to come up with a topic so they could research, so they eventually could write their essay. And middle schoolers have a hard time coming up with topics. They really, truly do, surprisingly. So I specifically created a student magic student space where I designed the bot to say, I want you to coach the students through coming up with a topic. And once they kind of come up with a topic or they're interested in topic, start giving them interesting facts about that topic to kind of keep them engaged. So at the beginning, when we did this for 2 full days with all the seventh graders. I would say all but 5 students had an idea about what kind of topic they wanted to research on. At the end of the 2 days, all but 5 students did not have one. And I was like, hey, just how did you feel engaging with this bot? Was it helpful for you to come? And all of the students were like, this was helpful. And the reason why this was so more helpful is that teacher could not have possibly walked around to every student to say, what's your topic? Oh, you need help with your topic. Let me help you out. There's no way. So we leveraged the AI to create multiple teacher heads so that students can engage. So I'll show you what that looks like. Magic School is called Magic Student. So let me escape and come in here. So if you're using Magic Students, it's called Magic Students. And this is what Magic School looks like. It gives you some tools to choose from. And what I specifically chose for this one here is I chose the research assistant. And so I can hit add and it'll appear in my toolbar. I'm going to click next. I'm happy with the way it is. You can customize it, which means this is where you can give it some rules and some feedback. Hey, I don't want you just giving students the answers to their topics. I also don't want you providing an outline for students. I want you to ask them questions and coach them. And you can say all of that here and kind of give it some parameters. And then I'll hit next. And then the students can start to engage. With a social studies teacher a couple weeks ago, they were doing Supreme Court cases where they were researching Supreme Court cases. And so we created a Magic Student space with Magic School specifically about court cases that were earlier than 100 years. And so they were engaging with individuals who were part of that court case as if that person was real. Like, yeah, not Abraham Lincoln, but it was a court case that really meant something that they were working on. So it was really, really powerful. And you can create this place. And then when you're done, what I love about this is here's the landmark court case. When I had the students log in, I give them a code. I ask them only to type in their first name. And then you can see that this is what's happening. These students are engaging in it. And so some of these students were working. So so this one right here, I'm working on a Supreme Court case that has to do with Jackson case. And so then the students started asking, well, can you tell me more about this court case? And then the AI bot was like, do you want me to represent person X from that court case? And so then they got to engage with that individual about that court case. And the goal was to help them inform them with their presentation and get more well-rounded information. Again, this social studies teacher could not have possibly taught 45 or so landmark court cases. It was impossible. Instead, we used the space to create so the students could engage that. That to me was really powerful. We did the same thing over here with this teacher who was the language arts teacher. Now her students were using, controversial topics, abortion, or certain things they were talking about. And so it was specifically flagging sometimes when students said something. So it'll also alert you when there's a conversation happening that may or may not be appropriate. Now, in this case, we know the students were choosing topics that might be controversial, and it was alerting us. But that's okay, because you can see everything the students are typing. So if I wanted to go ahead and click on it, I can actually see the conversation that's happening that the students engage in with that AI bot.
Oh my gosh, of course, Chris, I have a question.
No, go for it, dude. Absolutely. And I'm not going to go back to like quote presentation mode because I want to just kind of spend time here for a second. Yes, go ahead.
I teach IB Lang and Lit.
Okay.
And the kids have to start coming up with global issues for their interpretive orals. And I'm wondering if something like this would be really great for them to start thinking about what global issues could they attack and then talk about using what we've read in class. My only question is do kids have to have a school AI or Magic School account to do this, or can it be something that they just like can go and click on in Google Classroom?
I love it. That's an awesome question. So all they have to do is when you create this space as a teacher, it will give you an invite code. And so if it were me, Classroom, Google Classroom, Canvas, wherever it is, I copied this link and put it in my Canvas course or my Google Classroom. Now, I will tell you what I learned. This is what I learned. If you teach more than one class period, I learned that I wanted class period 1 to only see class period 1's conversation with the chatbot. The first time we did it, we didn't do that. So we had 170 kids all day long in the same chat. So I created period 1, period 2, period 3, and then just provided that link in my LMS or whatever I'm using. And once that happens, I just say, put in your first name only, please. And then the students, I can see who puts in their name. Now, I will say your question was awesome. And this is the reason why I like School AI a little bit more than Magic School, is the design of this specific bot it took me about a half an hour to build this. And the reason why is because I could test it out and I was trying to pretend to be middle school. So I would ask it stupid questions. And if it gave an answer that I didn't want, I came back to my instructions, which it looks kind of long and lengthy. It's because I wanted parameters to say things like, don't just give answers. Don't just provide an outline. When they come up with a topic they're interested in, press them, ask them questions about it. Because again, you would do the same thing as a classroom teacher, right? If you were specifically talking to a student about the topic, you would engage with them about these types of things. So I was creating the bot to do so. Now you're like, oh gosh, that's a lot of work. But here's what's cool about School AI is you can go into spaces and you could actually type in, what is it? Social.
Yeah, global issues in IB.
Yeah, or global issues, right? So let's say global issues. And so you could find someone else's and go and preview it and look at what they've created, and then you can actually use it to there. Cool. But I definitely will say a half an hour of what it took me. And that's why I started with this place here, going to what's called the assistants and going to what's called a space designer and saying, listen, I want to create a space for my students on the global issues. What are some things and questions that I should use? And that was really helpful. And honestly, 90% of my kids, the students, were fully engaged. And here's the other thing that's extremely powerful, and I think this to me is amazing, is that when they launched it, and I'll just go here, again, first name, and it already has the code in there as well. When you launch it, if you have students who are second language learner speakers who are not necessarily English as another first language, they can specifically ask the bot to talk to them in that language.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Seriously, I was like, Magic School does it a little bit better. It's more intuitive. School AI is kind of hidden, but it happens. And so again, I'm not trying to compare one versus the other, but the fact that it can engage the student, especially with your, let's say higher students, higher school, junior high students who are probably a little more functional, being able to type, it engaged them in that language that they had chosen. Now, I can't read Russian. I couldn't read whatever language they were using. But when I asked the students, did this help? Were you being helped? And they're like, yeah, this is actually pretty good. So
that's awesome. Can you do me the biggest favor? This is the weirdest question.
Yeah.
But the parameters that you set with not giving any feedback or anything like that, or not letting him don't cheat for the kid, can you copy and paste that into the chat? And then I can put it in when I start it. Oh my gosh.
I could.
You're like my own personal AI.
That's a big one. I think I've exceeded the limit. So.
Oh, okay.
This is all so helpful.
I'll
or you can just email it.
What if I copy? I'll copy. I'll copy half
it to me. I'll just put my email in the chat.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah. So, anyways, yeah. I mean, thank you for sharing. It was helpful. I definitely want folks to feel comfortable. And I'm not going to go quote present. I'm actually just happy to just chat. And you can see the pictures. I took a picture of the students, and this teacher, I think what you would do too, Bob, is intentionally creating places where the students were engaging the topic and getting into that point where they're ready to start the research, and then create those spaces for students. And the court case one was awesome. These were like high school, these were eighth graders who were engaged in learning about, whatever court case for education or it was awesome. It really was exciting to see them engage with it. So
yeah, that's great. We have less than
so,
3 minutes left.
Yeah, no, totally. So let's open it up. Does anybody have any questions? Do they want to ask anything or share? I flip flop them back and forth. I don't just use one tool. To be honest, I probably use Copilot more than anything because it's part of our district's account, so I just log right in. But it has all my history. It shows everything I've been working on, and I do a lot. And to your answer, Bob, it actually builds images really well. So if you did want images, it may not do like the type of like graphic image that you want for like information, but it does build images really well. So anyways, does anybody have any comments, questions? What do you use? What do you not use? Curious.
I have a general question. I'm trying to wrap my head around the space, creating the space form, and I'm not necessarily completely understanding. So you are creating the space, and then the students are going in and they are discussing what they're going to be working on. Is that I'm just kind of.
I mean, effectively, yes. Like, for example, here, if I want to create a bell ringer, for example, and I wanted my students to, like, I had a bell ringer, but I want them to respond to this bell ringer. I could create one that would do specifically on specific topics. So think of it like it's their own personal conversation that they're having about this topic, because you can't possibly get around to that. And in the case of the research, the teacher is not going to be able to get to every student. What's your topic? How engaged? It's just, so they created a place for the students to kind of get into those. And what I mean by creating a space where I spent some time really building it out was students are smart. Hey, just give me the answer. They'll type that in. And if the space I created would give them the answer, I had to go back and kind of modify it and say, encourage curiosity and in-depth understanding by allowing students to ask follow-up questions. And so I really kind of made it work. And so for you, it can be something that they're learning about. It could be something they're interested in that you feel like they could spend some independent time learning about that or reading about that. I also didn't cover the fact that if I wanted to with Magic School or School AI, you can also level text too. So if you knew you had a text that might be challenging for kids to engage in, but you wanted all of them to engage, you could level the text and then still create the space where students are working on this information. Is that helpful? Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just then copy and paste the text in there and ask it to level it accordingly.
Yeah. Or upload it. Like I can go ahead and upload it and click on upload file. I know, like it's just like there's a lot of things that you can do. That's
so if awesome. A student wrote a document, you could upload it and ask it to edit it for specific things. Like, if I just want it like that.
So you got their name and upload the document. Yes, you totally can.
Nice. Okay.
I know, right?
Hey, so many ideas. I just need all the time in the world to use.